It started with laughter, cruel, sharp, and echoing through the school auditorium like a wound reopening. The kind of laughter that doesn't just hurt, it burns. Two small girls stood frozen on stage, identical in face but trembling in different ways. Their white hand-me-down dresses hung loose on their frail shoulders, their hands clutching the microphones like they were clinging to the last thread of their dignity. The laughter came from the rows of students, a sea of sneers and whispered jokes, while teachers exchanged uneasy glances, pretending not to notice. Behind the curtains, one man watched with his heart breaking apart, a single dad named Owen, whose own scars from life ran deep enough to recognize cruelty when he saw it. Owen was the school's janitor, the man most people never looked at twice. He swept the same hallways where his daughters, Rosie and Grace, tried every day to belong. They weren't just poor, they were invisible, the kind of invisible that only kids who've been laughed at for wearing thrift store shoes or bringing lunch in reused containers could understand. Their mother had walked out when they were 3, leaving Owen with little more than a broken guitar and 2 daughters who thought the world of him. But lately, that world had been unkind. Bills piled up like ghosts haunting his every night. He'd play his guitar quietly in their small apartment to keep the girls from hearing his cries. And now, those same girls had been set up for humiliation. Some older kids had nominated them to sing at the annual school assembly, pretending it was an honor. The cruel truth, it was a prank. The twins didn't know. They thought it was their chance to shine. And when Owen found out that morning, it was already too late. He arrived at the school just in time to hear the laughter start, just in time to see Rosie lower her microphone in shame. But instead of walking away, he walked onto that stage. His boots echoed against the wooden floor, the laughter fading into murmurs. He didn't say a word. He just took a chair, sat down between his daughters, and opened the old guitar case he hadn't touched since before his wife left. The girls turned to him, eyes wet, voices shaking, but he nodded softly, the same nod he'd given them the night their mother never came home. That nod meant, I'm here. We do this together. If you're watching this on Be Kind Tales, pause for a moment. If you believe that hope still matters, that kindness can silence cruelty, and that second chances are worth giving, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because what happened next, no one in that auditorium would ever forget. The lights above the stage flickered as Owen began to strum the first soft chords. His hands trembled, but the sound was warm, raw, real, and aching with the pain of someone who'd carried too much alone. Rosie closed her eyes first, her small voice rising above the murmurs, uncertain at first but pure as sunlight breaking through clouds. Grace followed, harmonizing so perfectly that it felt less like singing and more like healing. Their voices didn't sound like children anymore, they sounded like souls that had lived 100 lifetimes of heartbreak and still dared to believe in something beautiful. The crowd fell silent, completely still. Even the teachers who had looked away now stared, transfixed. Every word the twins sang told a story of loneliness, of hope, of a father who refused to let the world break what was left of his family. The music filled the room like prayer, the kind that makes you remember things you've buried deep inside. Owen kept strumming, tears tracing lines down his face as his daughters' voices carried over him, blending into something divine. In that moment, the laughter turned to awe. The same kids who had mocked them now sat frozen, ashamed, some hiding their faces, some wiping their eyes. And when the last note hung in the air, trembling and golden, no one clapped. No one dared to. The silence was heavier, deeper, the kind of silence that meant the music had touched something sacred. Afterward, when the crowd finally stood, it wasn't applause that filled the room, it was the sound of hearts breaking and mending all at once. Teachers came up, students apologized, and the school principal himself knelt down to speak softly to the twins, promising to make things right. But the real moment, the one no one saw, happened backstage. Rosie and Grace threw their arms around their father, whispering, "We did it, Daddy, we finally sang." For Owen, it wasn't about revenge or proving anything. It was about saving them, saving their spirit before the world could convince them they weren't enough. Because he knew what it felt like to believe that lie. He'd lived it for years. He'd worked nights at the factory, cleaned the same classrooms that mocked his girls, and carried the guilt of not being able to give them more. But that day, under the school's bright lights, his daughters had given him something: redemption. Days passed, and the video of their performance spread through the small town, then beyond. Someone had recorded it, the song, the silence, the tears. People online began sharing it, writing messages about kindness and the power of love. Suddenly, the twins who were once laughed at were being invited to perform at local events. Owen was offered a small teaching position for guitar at the same school. For the first time in years, the family's tiny apartment was filled with laughter instead of worry. But even with all the attention, Owen kept them grounded. He still woke early to pack their lunches, still fixed their shoes, still sang them to sleep with the same cracked guitar. Fame wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that his daughters had found their voices, and in doing so, he had found his again. Still, sometimes at night, when the world went quiet, Owen would sit by the window and think about how close he came to giving up. He'd remember that morning when he saw their names on the assembly list and almost told them not to go. He realized that love isn't always about protecting your children from pain, sometimes it's about standing beside them through it. Weeks later, the school held a community concert to honor acts of kindness and courage. This time, the twins weren't on stage because of a joke. They were invited as guests of honor. Owen sat in the front row, guitar across his knees, watching as they sang a song they'd written together. It was about their dad, about a man who swept floors but built a home full of love. Their voices trembled at first, then grew stronger with every line, their eyes searching for him in the crowd. When they found him, he was already crying. The room fell silent again, just like before. But this time, it wasn't out of shock. It was reverence. The kind of silence that feels holy. If this story touched your heart, please support Be Kind Tales by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Stories like these remind us that no matter how broken we feel, compassion can turn even the cruelest moments into miracles. Before we close, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever seen kindness change someone's life? Tell us your story below. Because the truth is, that day wasn't just about two little girls and their father. It was about everyone who's ever been laughed at, overlooked, or doubted, and everyone who's ever found the strength to rise anyway. And as the final notes of their song faded into the evening light, Owen looked at his daughters and realized something he would never forget: sometimes, the world doesn't need another hero. It just needs someone brave enough to believe that broken voices can still sing.